Sunday night, Inside Texas YouTube channel. But we're talking a little bit of hoops. It's March. There's still madness going on. I know there's some more games probably going on. But Texas does what Texas typically does when you talk about making a coaching switch. Let's go. The coach officially early in the day makes the hire. Hadn't officially happened yet as we're going on here at 6 p.m. But sounds by all accounts, it's going to end up being Sean Miller, the Xavier head coach. It helps that he finally went and won the tryout game, right, Keenan? Because a couple of years ago we were thinking he may be the one that gets it. RT beats him, goes on to take Texas to the Elite Eight. But as we saw, our Rodney Terry's tenure as head coach of the Longhorns ended today. Didn't seem like it was a surprise. I know $5.4 million is a lot, but that's what happens when you end a contract 2 years into its 5-year deal. And I think people will be very appreciative of what Rodney Terry did, but understand there wasn't a lot of a bright future to look at with him at the helm.
Yeah, no, I think that, he did have some success, right? We looked at some of the coaches who came before him, and like Shaka Smart, for example, had no tournament success at all. Then you look at a guy like RT, and he has some tournament success, right? Even last year, he wins a tournament game, gets to the round of 32, which people were expecting, something similar this year, I think, maybe a little bit more with Trey Johnson in tow, but it's still, it's just they're trying to raise the standard of athletics at the University of Texas. I believe that CDC, that's his ultimate goal. And he's done that with all the other sports, and he's made big swing hires in all these other sports. So I'm not surprised that he let RT go and that he's moving in a new direction. I don't think that's super surprising to anybody.
I think one of the big things with RT is you look towards the future. And I've talked with this about you. Like, I think that in the modern portal era, you try to set up for 2-year cycles. And what was about to happen with Rodney Terry was just another full reset. You're losing, 6 guys off the roster. And then, that includes Trey Johnson. So that means the only guy in your class you have signed is John Clark. And I don't know exactly how good he is. I know he played at Link, but that doesn't scream, going to be banging in the post right away in the SEC. Like, it was going to take another full portal haul to try to get things going again next season. And then you got to do it again. Like, it just didn't seem very similar to how David Pierce, the situation he was in a couple of years or last year at this time. Like, you had some successes, then you start to dip and the future doesn't look as bright. In Texas, barring, or looking at down the barrel of a big reset, was like, let's let somebody else try this to invigorate some new energy into the program.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where, you have these nights at the Moody Center that are supposed to be packed house, and you don't have a packed house because there's not a lot of energy in the program, kind of like you said, right? And they, obviously they built it partially as a concert venue, but they partially built it as, we want to pack this place out with basketball fans and make this program. I mean, look at how successful the women's team is right now, and they're bringing crowds to their games. So you have to think, like, who's a guy that can bring energy? And I think Sean Miller is one of those guys that can do that because, first of all, high octane offense kind of basketball. Like, it's fun to watch. I mean, if you watch the game, obviously you watched the game, but to the listeners, whoever watched the game, you saw some of the fun off-ball screens and some of the actions that were going on away from the ball, and how that clears up shots for guys. And it's really fun. It's a really fun offense. So, I am a fan of this hire. We'll get into it more in a minute, but overall, I think they needed a guy who was going to bring an exciting brand of basketball, not just winning, but something that gets people involved. That they score 100 points a game. Look at how Alabama's fan base is just going crazy for that team that they have right now, and they're scoring 100 points a game. So I think this is an interesting hire from that perspective of just injecting energy.
Texas this year was very much ISO. They would hunt matchups and isolation because that's a part of Trey Johnson's game. It's going to have to develop. Arthur Kaluma's good at that. Jordan Pope's good at that. Shedrick was pretty good at that. So they would try to switch, and then finally get the defensive matchup, and then they play ISO ball. That's not pretty,
Yeah.
because it leads to some late clock shots, and that's also not that pretty. But you're talking about that first 4 game. There was like 3 or 4 actions on one play, and it's just like, where has this been all year? So that's something that Sean Miller brings just as an offensive coach to the table for Texas that Rodney Terry really didn't have. I think Rodney Terry was mostly called in to be Beard's defensive guy, bringing in that no middle defense that Beard picked up at Tech. And I know, Mark Adams was the one that everybody credits for putting that together. Rodney Terry was calling that defense at Texas, or putting it together, and it was very successful during those first couple of years. Didn't really seem like on offense, like there was a lot of cohesion in that front as well. I guess at the very end of the day, what's Rodney Terry remembered as during his time at Texas? And, you go all the way back to Rick Barnes, his time as an assistant, coming back as an assistant, and then a short stint as head coach. I feel like it's remembered fondly, but it's not going to be, I don't know. What do you think of how people may look back on Terry as a head coach?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like it started off just such a sweet run. Like there's no doubt about the fact that it's one of the most fun runs that in Texas basketball history, just because you look at the circumstances, you look at the things surrounding the team, the fact that they rallied together, and we were at that game the night after the incident, and how weird the energy was in the building. The fact that he was able to steer that ship in the right direction, truly impressive job in that instance. But I think he'll probably be remembered as a guy who just got maybe put too much on his plate, right? Like, I think that obviously he has a place in basketball. He's been an assistant here and there. He's been head coach here and there. I don't think people are going to look back on it with, anger or anything like that. I think it'll just be more like he was not meant to be the head coach at this program at this time right now. You know what I mean? And I hope that they remember the run, because that was so much fun. Like that was one of the most fun times I've had watching Texas sports in general, regardless of the sport. And yeah, it was definitely that run is what people should remember.
Our guy RT Young put it really well. It was a low risk, low reward hire. Modern basketball, you just watch John Calipari. Like, you can put together, it's possible to put together a roster in 1 year. It's not like you're having to dig up from the depths and you have like a 4-year rebuild before anything happens. Like, this team, I'm not saying it's going to be, because we have a long way to go. It could be in the top 25 all year next year. And in football, if even like you look at what happened with Sark's team, like, and I hate doing cross-sport references on a basketball topic, but like, it took a little while for it to get going. You can go right away. I mean, Rick Pitino did it. I mean, in 2 years, and yeah, I know they got eliminated, but they won the Big East and they're playing good basketball. Like, you can get things switched in a hurry to where it's not like this program's in an unbeatable hole, or, a hole it can't dig itself out of at this point. So you have to pay $5.4 million to get out of it if you're Texas. Still school friendly. That's payable over the month, monthly. Rodney Terry has a duty to mitigate, and so if he goes and gets another job, every dollar he earns from whatever school it is going to reduce his buyout. And Texas is making money. I know $5.4 million is still a lot on basketball, but it's making money. So it's not just I know you got the staff and stuff like that, but it's not the end of the world. So Rodney Terry done. We'll talk about Sean Miller, answer a couple questions, but first, some love for our sponsor. That's Laura Baker.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512, or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
So Sean Miller, who Texas fans have seen a couple times now, one of the most infamous losses in Texas history was at the hands of Sean Miller, 5-second violation. He started at Xavier, went to Arizona, had good things going at Arizona. I think he technically was the permanent successor to Lute Olson, because I read that they had some interim guys when Lute was battling some health problems. Does great things at Arizona. The FBI gets involved, recruiting falls off, and between that and some poor results, Arizona lets go of him, and he goes back to Xavier and seems to have things going again. So overall, what do you think about just Sean Miller, the coach, what he brings coming to Texas here in 2025?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say the FBI ruins everything. They're always ruining my stuff too. Man, I am a fan of this hire from a perspective of somebody who likes to watch fun offenses. This is an offense that scored a lot of points this year, right? They were 78 points per game. And the other thing that's interesting is they were pretty high paced, right? They were 114th in the country, but they weren't like top 10 pace in the country. They weren't like an Alabama or somebody like that who's killing the pace every time. And that's because they're not shooting early in the shot clock and they pass the ball around a lot. They like to move the ball quite a bit on the offensive end. You look at, some of their sets, and a lot of it is, like Joe said earlier, a lot of off-ball actions, but there will be multiple on the same play or multiple on the same set, multiple on the same possession down the floor. They're also a team that likes to get into transition a lot, and they like to attack in transition. They like to try to force turnovers and get into transition, because I think a fifth of their possessions last year were on the break. So definitely like a big get it into transition and try to score that way type of team,
I'm trying to check. I know Ken Palm's not the be all end all, but in adjusted tempo, they were 78th, which means, they're upper, I guess that's upper quarter or so. They're going pretty quick, and they're good in offense and defense, top 50. I mean, they were a tournament team. They were a bubble team, but they also had, I think they had some injury problems throughout the season. Fremantle was banged up, as he seems like it's been his whole career.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of things, and I think you can look back even at some of his Arizona days, is that he has had a lot of different types of players. This team that he had at Xavier seemed to be very guard driven, and perimeter shooting being a big factor of it. He's recruited, granted Arizona's different, and we know there were some inducements possibly involved, but he got guys to play some down low styles and work with DeAndre Ayton, whose offensive range extends to about as tall as he is. At least it did at Arizona. So they've had a lot of different things that he's been able to work with. What do you think he may bring defensively? That's always seems like when you got an offensive coach that's just saying zoom, 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 sometimes you forget about that. What might he bring defensively to the Longhorn basketball program?
Yeah, so Xavier this year defensively, they were kind of like a team that tried to control the pace defensively by controlling the defensive glass, not getting killed on the offensive boards. They're also a team that really tries hard not to foul because of the way that they defend. So their guards switch, but their bigs typically play drop where they hedge depending on the opponent. So you get kind of different looks from this defense that Sean Miller runs. This year was interesting. They had good numbers defensively, but in talking to some Xavier supporters and stuff over the last week, they said that those numbers were sort of inflated. They didn't have great rim protection in general, not a lot of shot blocking, things like that. So Xavier is definitely a team that scores a lot of points, maybe won't lock you down, can get stops when they need to. But it's going to be a different look than most Texas fans are used to, who are used to these grinded out rock fight games. I think it's going to be more high scoring going forward. That would be my anticipation from the way that Sean Miller likes to run his offense and defense.
Just in the past 10 years, you think of Shaka, who probably took on more of defensive. All the guys that they hired, Shaka, Beard, and kind of Rodney Terry. I know that I called him a defensive coordinator. They try to be total coaches, but they really stressed on defense. Shaka had Havoc. I know that they brought in we play man until we don't play basketball anymore. What's his name? Jokic, Luke Jokic. Just doing man all over the place. Beard, tries to be a hard-nosed defensive-minded coach, no middle, but he was trying to be complete. Rodney tried to be – this is an offensive coach.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're going to hear whenever he does start filling out his staff how important whatever defensive assistant he wants to bring in, that's going to be very, very critical to whatever happens to Longhorn basketball. Got a couple of comments. I know we haven't really talked about this that much. Like, we think this is a really good hire. I do, at least.
I kind of do too. Yeah.
I feel like it's something that you have someone who you have seen utilize tools well in the past, and ostensibly Texas is going to give them those tools. I mean, if they're going to pay him, over $3.5 million like Rodney Terry made, I would assume they're going to pay him more. They're going to give them the other tools. If Chris Del Conte has said that they want every program in the top 5 and competing in the national title picture, and I'm sure they're going to give them tools, both rev share wise and stuff like that. If not, Sean Miller may have to hustle, and Sean Miller's never been out of football school. That's my one small hesitation. What does that look like? Because I think Nate Oates has hustled. I think Bruce Pearl has hustled. I think, even Buzz Williams has. And I think that, yes, you can find these great successes. You still have to hustle a little bit. That's my lone hesitation right now when it comes to Sean Miller. It's is he going to be just kind of settling in, or is he going to hustle, do a lot of the outreach just to generate conversation that Beard did? Because that was what he was great at. He could build excitement in a program unlike anybody else. And Sean Miller may not be able to do that, but he does have to be able to do a little bit more. He's got to get off the couch. And I think all the past 2 coaches that were let go or went to Marquette were unable to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think building excitement is this underrated kind of unquantifiable aspect other than, butts and seats. That's kind of like your guide. But, we talk a lot about building culture and stuff. A lot of building culture and getting fans in the building is winning games, and the more that they play these games, I mean, maybe they'll schedule tougher teams at the beginning of the year. Part of the reason Texas barely got into the tournament was because they had such a bad non-conference, and it's hard for fans to get into it when you're playing bottom 50 Ken Palm teams week in, week out, right? That's
bottom
difficult.
10.
Bottom 10, that's crazy.
They played Mississippi Valley State, man. That they were the bottom of the barrel.
Literally the worst team in college in Division I basketball by Ken Palm. So there are things that he can do, because I remember Beard scheduling some games that second year. So they played Creighton and they played Gonzaga, and those were both really cool home, just giant home games where the place was packed. It was loud. It was super intense. It was a lot of fun. And that's what I'm kind of looking for with Sean Miller. I want him to build that back up. I want people to be excited / scared to play in Austin. I don't want it to be a cakewalk for all these teams to come in and win these games because there's no fan participation.
I did notice Sean Miller had a podcast, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But that's easy fan outreach. You can hear from the basketball coach. One thing in a story I'm writing, it's he's been at 2 schools where around October, people are wondering okay, what's the point guard depth look like? Now he's at a school where around October, it's SEC play in football. So it'll be very, very different compared to any other job that he has taken. I know Evan wrote a good story, and this question kind of parlays into that. Who do you think we get in the portal? Man, it's too early. The portal opens tomorrow. I guess it technically opens today for Texas because they let go of Rodney Terry, and that opens a 30-day window. I don't think anybody's made a decision quite yet. We'll probably learn a little bit more tomorrow. It's why you need to stay tuned to Inside Texas and to go check out Joe Tipton on Twitter. He's been able to help us a lot with that. But I think one of the things that he's got to get done very quickly is identify who from this roster can come back. And number one may be the guy he praised over and over on Wednesday and getting Kendall Weaver back for another year.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are definitely pieces. I mean, I think Jordan Pope is a perfect Sean Miller piece, personally. Like, I think he's a guy that fits into what Sean Miller wants to do, like, perfectly. I think he could adapt very easily into the Miller offense. But, yeah, I think Weaver and Pope are both guys you try to convince to stay, whether or not that happens or not. I mean, you may have to go completely from scratch. You're going to have to go completely from scratch in a lot of ways. And that's just the nature of things. But as you were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, the episode there are a lot of guys who have turned it around very quickly, right? Dusty May at Michigan is an example. Pat Kelsey at Louisville. There are guys that come in and they flip things over on their head and they're able to succeed quickly because of the roster overturn every year. So, there's no reason Sean Miller can't come in and be very successful in year one. Now, I wouldn't say to expect that, but it is a possibility. So I'm very excited to see the kinds of players that they look at in the portal, whether they go, how much they go for depth, how much they go for spending on a big player like a JT Toppin or somebody like that. I am very curious to see how the money's allocated and what kind of players that Sean wants to go after.
I haven't looked at the Xavier signing class yet, but those guys are going to have decisions to make. John Clark's going to have literally everybody has a decision to make. So it's funny. This is the third time in 5 years that who's playing? We don't know. We have no clue who's going to be on the roster. And I can understand why that can cause some consternation. But I guess one other thing to make sure we go over is, remember, he was let go by Arizona, and he was in the middle of the big FBI case. Will Wade got caught up in that. And I think a lot of people thought, well, Will Wade and the FBI, that means he's not going to be an option for Texas. And then I think more or less that was true. Arizona, they got in some trouble with that. And I think they got sent to whatever the enforcement arm of the NCAA is. And that got Sean Miller fired. But Texas still hired him even after that. Is there anything to see there? Is like, hey, all that stuff that he got in trouble for, you can kind of do now, and it's no problem at all.
Yeah, I think it's just like a change of culture. I really do. I've talked about this a lot with different people, and whether or not these sins of a former era, right? But now we're in this era where it's not only is it it's encouraged to do that. It's you have to do it in order to survive in this era. And you have guys like Will Wade who just went to NC State, and you have guys like Sean Miller. I think it's totally fine now. I really do. I think now that it's legal and now that it's encouraged, I have no problem with the guy getting in trouble with the FBI for something that's totally fine now, and it's not like a thing to me that's like morally questionable. It's like some of these kids, they deserve the money in my eyes. So whether it was legal or not is a different question, I guess, back then. But yeah, that'd be my take now. Is I don't think there's nobody's holding that against them anymore.
I think one of the big things is that he was wearing blue, not orange. Now he's wearing orange, but like he didn't
Right.
get into Arizona's back. Like it didn't cause debilitating damage to Arizona. Tommy Lloyd's doing just fine. Xavier's probably going to make a good hire. That's a basketball crazy school. So I feel like, and I know Texas cares a lot about image. It's part of the reason why we're in this situation again. But if they go that far and made the determination that it's not something that bothers them, especially like I said, since a lot of what he did was legal or is legal now, I don't really think it's a big deal. Heck, it may help them get some of the players that they need going forward. Anything else? Any other big thoughts you got? I know we'll probably be talking about this all week with spring practice starting tomorrow. It's going to be filling in some for some of the downtime and the buzz we need when we don't have anything football going on. But any other big thoughts on Sean Miller and just what you think he'll be bringing to 40 Acres?
Yeah, the only other point I'd have is I wonder how many of these guys are going to transfer from Xavier, because there's some very talented players on that team. You know, Fremantle obviously is done. I believe he's graduated, but you know, I think Conwell's a junior, and I believe Dalen Swain's a sophomore. So you know, maybe those are guys you try to get to come to Texas. I mean, Dalen Swain is a fantastic defensive player, guy that's been on NBA radars a little bit. So you know, we'll see who they get in the portal and whether any of those guys come from Xavier or not.
I think Swain. No, Conwell. Conwell was a Indiana State guy. So if Jason Kent,
he was.
If Jason Kent and Julian Larry want to provide any solids, and go ahead and give him a little bit of encouragement. Keenan, thanks for hopping on Sunday. Thank you for watching here on the Inside Texas YouTube channel. If you're here, go ahead and like and subscribe. Spring practice starts tomorrow. Pro days this week. We got a lot going on. I'm sure Sean Miller will be introduced at some point. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, head to InsideTexas.com for all the latest analysis. I'll have something either tonight or tomorrow. Keenan's working on something, and our guy Tim Preston. If you know Tim, you know that what he brings is some great analysis and over decades of Texas basketball. He's been watching this program longer than we've been alive. So hate to date him like that, but had to do it. So Keenan, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.